So welcome everybody. Tonight we have Jacob Mollot, who was my student for a few classes, a couple certainly, and I helped him out as he was putting together a pretty technically challenging cinema thesis, which I think I'll talk a little bit about tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to Jacob, who's going to talk about some experiences with that, and then kind of what he's done since with some freelance work to make the process maybe a little bit easier and more accessible.
Okay, hello everybody. Like I said, no one's wearing a costume. However, I am, you can see from my face. So my name is Jacob. I was in one or two of Brad's classes, up to maybe 100, 1, 2, or 100. And I graduated from IC in 2020. And you know what? This is actually part of my PowerPoint. So I'm just gonna start with the PowerPoint. The introduction is it's all there. So
Perfect.
I don't want to mess with my flow. Okay. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yep. I forgot you see, right? So we're gonna have to say yep.
Okay, cool. If anything goes wrong, feel free to tell me. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask them. Anything at all is welcome. So starting off, this lecture is called Shortcuts to 3D Characters. And basically, the theme of this is going to kind of just be, oh, nice, Brad. The theme is going to be kind of like shortcuts, fast ways, tips, things to do things in 3D that aren't so spooky. So first off, who am I? I, like I said, am Jacob, and I graduated from Ithaca College 2020. I made several films there. Last 2 years really started getting into the CG, animation, MoGraph, VFX, all that stuff. And if you're still young in college, get into that as fast as you can if you like it, because it's a lot, and I had to pack a lot in a short time, so that's what I'd recommend. And yeah, I like to continue making movies and direct things and make music videos, all kinds of stuff, but also do freelance stuff, which I will be getting to as well a little later on. But I want to start with little basic like terminology, what it usually kind of looks like working in something like Autodesk Maya, which is a 3D program, just so we can kind of be on the same page for how this normally goes. And then I'll get into doing some workarounds using other programs and speeding up your process. So I'll try to kind of get through this part as fast as I can. Let me know if it seems like it's halfway through and I haven't gotten through this stuff. Okay. Ready for a scare? Is everybody ready? Everybody ready? Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. That's scary. Maya is a little scary. If you haven't heard of it, it is a 3D program, is the industry standard 3D program, and it has a lot of functionality, and it can be kind of intimidating. And that's why, knowing some workarounds, knowing some specific skills can be very useful. So the blood-curdling process of making a CG character from scratch. Let's get into it. So as a little case study here, we have my friend Ruben Shapiro, who I created for my senior thesis. This is what he looks like. He's an eyeless, noseless, mouth hole, and it took a lot of work to make him. What the hell is going on here? Okay. Oh, no. There we go. Modeling. So as you can see, Frankenstein here. The Halloween theme is going strong. Modeling is the process of molding a 3D mesh, which is a mesh is just an object. I mean, that's the easiest way to describe what it is. It's called a mesh because you have a lot of it is, you ever see like 3Ds, a bunch of like, you know, these squares, and it looks kind of like a mesh, so that's why it's called mesh. So I'll be saying mesh probably a lot, and or combining multiple meshes to create your 3D character. And it can take a spookily long time to do so, trust me. And the modeling is the base for your character, from which you will build a skeleton, upon which you will animate it and bring your character to life. It's not quite as simple as just forming it. There's some different protocols, different processes, different tools for different kind of things you're trying to do. But at the end of the day, it's like, this is the base of your character. This is what's going to be rendered. This is what people are going to see. This is and besides, you know, conceptual stuff, this is around the first step of getting into it. And this is me building Ruben from a concept that my girlfriend actually made for me, which is very nice. So this was like, you put it up in the scene and you start modeling based off of the picture. You try to get it as what's the word,
Orthographic.
orthographically symmetrical and all that as you can. You get it from each angle. You try to keep everything the same, and that can be like kind of difficult as well. But then you basically model off the reference of it. Even when you're going from scratch, you're still kind of doing this reference-based work. There's never really from scratch. It's always starting from something. But yeah, so this was that process of modeling. And then we get into rigging, and that's the skeletal aspect. So the process of applying a skeleton or deformation tools to your model so that you can move it around, and you give it like little handles so that you can drag this up and bend this and that kind of stuff. Just like a human skeleton, joints are added, which leverage the body in a localized way to where the joint is. And a simple rig isn't too hard. You just kind of place some joints there and connect it. But perfecting one is very, very spooky indeed. And this is just a little bit of the rigging process. As you can see here, are you able to see my mouse when I'm kind of like circling around? Okay. As you can see here, this is these little things right here are joints, and then the handles around them are handles for moving the joints. And then yeah, there's just, you can see that every place logically where there would be a joint, there is. Sometimes it's a little bit you have some license where you put them, but yeah. And then this is the parenting structure in Maya. You can see like it's like the clavicle moves the shoulder, moves the elbow, moves the wrist, moves the hand, and so on and so on. Think of it just like a folder structure. If you move the top folder, it's going to move everything in it. If you move the bottom folder, it's going to move just the bottom folder. And then you can get into some other things that where the bottom folder moves the top folder, but don't worry about that. That's some more like advanced kind of stuff. But yeah, so you can think about it. And then there's weighting, which is where you say, okay, here's a joint in the shoulder right here. Let's say how much influence it's going to have. So it's going to have a lot of influence right at the shoulder. But then if you notice when you move, you know, your shoulder, maybe your neck kind of a little bit moves and your skin moves a little bit next to your shoulder. So you kind of have this fall off of weighting, and then you get these wacky results where you can look at this shoulder right here on the right and it looks terrible. And then I had to do some work on that. And that's even more like in-depth stuff. And if you want to know about all that process, I did talk on this thing already. It's probably in the YouTube channel somewhere, so I won't go too far into it, but it's a lot of work. And then there's the lip sync. That's another aspect of the rigging. Is in this case I use blend shapes, which means that I have these little tools here basically that blend between like the neutral expression and like smiles and snares and wide and closed and that kind of stuff. And yeah, and then at the end there's texturing, and it's the process of creating, you know, a skin for your character. Just like human skin, there's fine little details. It's not totally flat that you might want to capture, unless you're going for something flatter and more cartoony. And then there's something called UV mapping, which is extremely spooky. And I'm not going to get too far into any of that because we're not even going to really get into that. We can just assume that with a lot of the pre-made stuff I'm using, it's already been UV mapped, so don't worry about that right now. And then again, applying a simple material, which is just like, I'm going to make this look metally and it's just going to be like silver. That's not super hard necessarily, but when you want to get into detailed stuff, you're going to have to UV things, you're going to have to do some more time consuming stuff. Like for me, I actually made these maps here in Photoshop and Mudbox, which is a program for texturing. And you can see it's not necessarily, I mean, it's kind of like unfolding a Hershey's wrapper. It's like the Hershey exists in 3D space, but the 2D image that's on the wrapper is flat, and then it's wrapped around the Hershey. So basically this is the unwrapped version of Rubin, and there's a lot of maps, and these basically have, it's essentially like coordinates onto the body where it's going to go, and there's more details there, but again, we can assume with the pre-made stuff that it's gonna have a lot of that kind of stuff built into it, and you're going to be able to do it more practically where you're kind of drawing on the model instead of drawing on this, which is a little bit more confusing. But you can also draw on the model in 3D programs. Let's just say that it can be complicated.
So Jacob, could you step back a second to those UV map images? So what are some problems like when you do like a UV map like incorrectly or don't UV map an object? Like what could you expect if I try to map a image onto that?
Sure. So yeah, I'll basically, when you have an object and it's something that you've done something to, so it's not just the standard object anymore, maybe you deformed it in a little bit of a way, or even if you haven't, sometimes it can, it doesn't necessarily come with these, like, it just knows where, let's say it's a cereal box and you have the logo of the box, you think, okay, just slap that on there, but the software has to know where the logo goes on the box. And for it to know that, you have to treat the box like it's being wrapped in something. And then, so then you have to unwrap that thing, that theoretical object that exists in UV space. That's why it's called UV. And then once you unwrap that, then you it's like you essentially draw on that and then rewrap it on there. That's kind of what UV unwrapping and then texturing and then applying the texture. That's kind of what happens. So if you don't do that, then you'll get areas where it's like the logo is super smeared and it's like super it's not proportional to the rest of the box, stuff like that. It actually, I think they're trying to kind of reform this process a little bit with some of the stuff that I think Pixar and Disney are developing.
P-text,
but yeah, called P-text, right? But besides that, the UV process is kind of something that every 3D artist has to deal with to an extent. And it's something that can be very frustrating and difficult and time consuming. And when you look at these maps right here, basically, you can see these like cuts. And basically what you do is you pretend you had a pair of scissors. And so let's say we have the cereal box, but it has no cuts in it. It's just, it's a theoretical, just totally encapsulating object. It wasn't put on, it just exists as it is. Now you need to cut the seams of it so that you can take it off. And that itself is like part of the art of it. So you can see that along the edges here, this is where I decided to cut the seams. And then it kind of opens up like this, when you see it as like a human face, it can be very creepy. It just kind of like, it's like you took a human face and just unwrapped it and slapped it on a canvas.
Yeah.
And what you get here, this is kind of the mouth, and around the mouth is the front of the head, and then around here is kind of like the back, and then these are the arms, obviously. It's like, I mean, it's not like this, but just imagine you took something and just squished it into flatness, and then that's now the 2D representation of your 3D thing. And if you don't do that right, it can look like you just squashed something. So you have to kind of there's some finesse to it, and these maps correlate to how light's going to reflect off the object, basically. So the center here is a specular map. That means that where it's, let's say where it's lighter, it's going to be more shiny, where it's darker, it's going to be less shiny. And then in the top left here, that's the believe that's the sub scattering map. So that's basically like kind of what I use to kind of make it look like Ruben had kind of these veins like underneath his skin, and it looked like he had skin, where, you know, if you hold a flashlight up to your hand, you're going to kind of get some of the light kind of scattering in your hand. That's why when you put a, like, if you have a thinner, like the tip of your finger would be thinner, if you put a flashlight right there, you would see this like red kind of on the other side.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Eric is holding up a flashlight behind his hand.
Oh.
Yeah. Exactly like that.
Yeah, that is you know, your skin is partially your skin's a little translucent. It's not totally blocking all the light. So when light hits it, it's going to have a certain appearance that if it doesn't, it's not going to look like skin, it's going to look like a plastic. So that's kind of what the purpose of subscattering is within the object. And then you have over here the diffuse map, which is just basically the mats. Just, it's like if you just painted on top of him, just this is what his you know, if he had like a scar right there, I draw that there, and that's just what you see is what you get. That's the color. And then this is a normal map, which shows how light is going to reflect off the surface. It can make it look like it has space, like it's three-dimensional, like the skin itself, like it's kind of bumpy or something. Should I go into any more detail? I don't want to get too technical.
No, that's good. But I'm glad that you kind of described the different maps and like some pitfalls too. I think your example of like a wrapper or a box or like clothing, like seams, those are all like good examples as to kind of what you're doing, like reverse engineering that.
Yeah, it is. Reverse engineering is a good way to describe it. And it's, that can be a really, really annoying process. In fact, like that can be like almost kind of inhibitive if you make a really complicated mesh or character. It can be really difficult to know where to cut the seams and stuff like that. So while it's not totally necessary to get really into it, this is partially what you're avoiding when you're getting something that's pre-made is the process of UVing and having to texture it yourself out. Like I said, you can texture in 3D space where it's like you have the model and then you're like painting on it and stuff, but you still have to UV it in that case. So with the pre-made stuff, the programs I'll show you, you'll see that you're kind of doing that. You're just kind of like drawing or using parameters and changing the model in the program already UV'd and stuff. And that's basically just taking these maps and you're drawing things on them, and then it's locating it on the thing. Okay, and then last but not least, animation. It's alive. Is the process of adjusting joints and deformation positions, like your arm moves this way and then this way and this way and this way, this way, this way, and then it becomes fluid, and then all of a sudden you're moving. And that's, you know, that's the simplest way to put it. In reality, the process involves making, in 3D at least, and there's different approaches, but making key poses like at big expressions or extremes, you're like, or like, oh, and then like, yeah, and you're kind of going from thing to thing. And then in between those poses, you're making more poses. And then between those in between poses, you're making more in between poses until you finally just let the 3D program fill in all the rest of the empty space. And it's actually, as opposed to some of the other things I showed you, it's actually really hard to get an animation to look good. And it's not just going to start simple, like a material you could apply. You can do that. An animation, you can't just like slap that on. It's just not going to look good. And it's a real process. And most of the time you're doing it, it's not going to look good. You're kind of waiting until it looks good enough. It goes from like bad to okay to good to pretty good to now I'm done. And that's kind of how animation works a lot of the time. And there's ways to speed it up, and you can, but 3D is especially hard because when in 2D, if a character just pauses and just stops moving, it's like, okay, it's a cartoon that, and it looks okay if they just kind of stand there while the main character's talking. In 3D, because you're kind of projecting this reality onto it, when a character just stops and just freezes, it feels really weird. It feels like it feels like something, like a robot replaced the character or something. And so you're not just animating these extreme things, you're also, some of the hard part is just animating like a just standing still position. Just standing there is hard to animate. So that's where things like motion capture, which you can take the data of from libraries and stuff where somebody recorded the movements already, you take that and then the simplest way to put it is just copy that onto a character. And now that movement, besides having to clean it up a little bit, is kind of done. The work is done for you. So that's a shortcut I'm going to get into. So this is just a little breakdown of the character. I figured I would include it. There's a finished product, modeling, rig, fuse. Those are texture maps. And then the final product, Ruben Shapiro talking. And that took a long time. So now, but what if there was another way? What if there's another way? How am I on time right now?
You're about halfway, so like you're at 8:30. So
okay.
Probably want to take it just 15 minutes, 15 to 20 more.
Okay, cool. Does anyone have any questions about anything before I get into some of the other programs?
Yeah, Sam.
Hi, Jacob. I had a question about Maya. I was wondering, I mean, you mentioned that you took like classes at school, but I was wondering if you like did some sort of like, courses online to, get used to like working with Maya, and how long did it take to be like comfortable working with it?
I mean, in some ways I'm still not comfortable. It's really, it's something that is a super learning. It's not necessarily that the learning curve is so high that you need to learn everything before you then understand Maya. It's just like you're learning all the way through in a way, and there is a little bit of a curve before you can comfortably be alone in the program. But basically, I took Brad's classes. I asked Brad about 20,000 questions, and then I looked online. And then I made a film, the first film I made, and then I made another film. And then it was that second film where Ruben, the character I just made, when I made that character, and again, I was going through tutorials, I was going through with Brad the whole time. Once I did that, I felt like I had like a real like handle on 3D and Maya. But there's still, I mean, I still know how to do everything in Maya, and there's plenty of things that there's not too many people that could say I know everything in Maya. So
yeah, anybody who says that is usually lying. It's really, really broad and deep. But I think what you said about modeling and rigging and texturing a character, it covers like the bases of the full pipeline in the program. That if you get through that process, I think you'll have a proficiency where you'll feel confident and comfortable in the program. And there's resources too, because it's such a common process that you can find lots of resources to get you through.
Thank you.
I love lynda.com, or it's LinkedIn Learning now. A lot of tutorials.
Yeah, excellent stuff. And Ryan, you had a question?
Hey, Jacob. So I wanted to get your advice because currently I'm working on a typography animation, and then in the next upcoming weeks for my final, I'm working on an animation that's going to be using virtual environments. So can you go more in depth with just UV wrapping? Because whenever I make my environments, I'm so used to slapping textures on that I never take the moment to UV wrap, because I always thought it was a hard thing to do. So can you just go in further in depth with your process? And also, second question upon that, what creates smoother animations? I just want to know your opinion on that, because my opinion is for my typography project, my animation looks terrible. Brad's gonna look at me different next week.
Okay, Shayna, I see you worrying. I'm gonna answer this really quickly.
Yeah.
the point of this was really to get more into the other stuff. So I'm gonna have to answer you quickly, and you're free to message me or anything
Mhm.
after this, and I can go into more detail. But
Yeah.
essentially, it really depends on what your environments are. If you're just doing like a square room or something, you could like unwrap each wall as just a flat plane and then project your texture onto it. And then that's kind of what I did for rooms that I made. Or you could, I mean, it really depends like what your virtual environments are. I would have to see them. And yeah, the UV mapping process it can be made simpler in some cases, especially when you have like very like not super heavy, just like flat, like square surfaces. You can just do each side of the square instead of having to like unwrap the whole thing. But like I said, it depends what you're doing. So message me after. As far as
Yeah.
smoother animations, having things ease in and out, having things like doing in between keyframes, like I talked about, making sure that you're not just pressing the beginning button and then keying it at the end so that it's like it starts here and ends here. You got that part. It's the in between stuff that's going to smooth it out. So you're going to want to definitely like curve the in, curve the out, look at the animation graphs you can see, so you can do that. And that's kind of the quickest advice I can give on that. But yeah, message me after so I can go more into that if you want.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, any other questions?
Let's jump into it first. We can take some more at the end.
Okay. So the magical spells for making 3D characters.
Love it.
We have three different potions, as I'll call them. We have the creator potion, which is making a model. It's you start with kind of a template, and then you do some parameters, and then you kind of like the arm's a little bigger here, this is a little smaller there, and then maybe it slaps on a rig to that, and then the textures come with it, and you're good to go. And I'll show some working examples in programs. That's kind of that's the creator programs that you make a thing, and it's the thing now. The animator potion, as I'll call it, are programs that will apply animation to an object that has already been rigged, or it will rig it for you and then do that. Now, these are things that are working off of algorithms, and it doesn't know everything about your thing that you made. So there's all of these things that I'm talking about. There's going to be cleanup. That's kind of where you get into weighing the pros and the cons, because if you build it from scratch, you know everything within it, you know what you want to do. If you use these kind of broader programs to just like make a character, there's going to be cleanup. It's going to be a little more limited in how customizable it is. So especially with mocap, there's some cleanup involved in that, which what cleanup means is basically the animation might not look super smooth and you have to adjust a couple keyframes or something. So there's let's just okay, the last thing is just programs where you can, or websites really, where you can just download shit. So you can just download characters. Sometimes they have rigs, sometimes they don't. They're usually UV, sometimes they're not. It's a little bit of a crapshoot sometimes, but I certainly download tons of stuff. And sometimes it's free, a lot of times it's not. Include that in your contract if you have a freelance thing that you're downloading things, because I had a little conflict with that one time. So yeah, so as far as the creator programs, we have Adobe Fuse. I put Adobe in quotes because it is now Steam Fuse, I guess. I'm not exactly 100% sure, and it might be gone in 2 years, and I don't know, but I still use that as long as it's going to be here. I'll show, like I said, some photos. Autodesk character generator, and feel free to like take a screenshot of this because I tried to arrange it in that way so that it would all be here in one place. So if you want to take a screenshot of this slide, Autodesk character generator is a program you can use to model, texture, rig, and you can do some blend shapes with that. And it's going to be easiest to explain once I show some pictures, but basically yeah, these are the programs right here. And once I get into the kind of the working example of when I use them, it'll make a little more sense. Okay. So this is DAWs 3D. This is kind of what you're going to get with a lot of these programs. You have sliders on the left here. You can see that there's like, this is like some basic stuff. You can get into some more advanced stuff when you go through the tabs here, but you got the character. And it's like, oh, all that work that I could have done making this character, it's already here now. And basically what it's doing is just morphing between little parameters to make it more customizable for you. So if I was in the program, I would slide and you could see like, oh, it's like getting older now, it looks younger now, it looks more masculine, looks more feminine, that kind of stuff. And then we have similar thing with Fuse right here with our elf goddess woman. Like I said, PG-13. I think I said that. So yeah, like, and then this one you're gonna this of all the programs, I'm gonna say Fuse has the most modularity. You can customize the most things in Fuse. It's also the most wonky program, and you're gonna run into problems sometimes when exporting things and putting them into real 3D programs. But it has a lot of customizable sliders, and I make this bigger, I make this smaller, and there's clothing too. You have different dresses and this and that. And then this is character generator. This is the Autodesk program. And I'm going to kind of fly through a little bit because they all work very similarly. It's very like self-explanatory. It's just like, oh, I want this kind of look, and then I slide this thing and that kind of stuff. They all work very similarly. Where you'll want to use one over the other is a lot of the time for me, it was like if they had templates that looked most like the thing I was trying to do. So it's like, which program has the best starting point where I will have to do the least work to get to where I want to go. And it really depends. Fuse I like because I think it has the most variety. And then this is what you get when you, so all the work I did where you saw those mouth shapes on Ruben, you saw like I can make him smile, I can make him frown. All that stuff is done for you by character generator, and what those are called are blend shapes. And so let's say this is the character, this is just a stock one, but let's just say this is the thing I came out with, and now I put it in Maya, and you can see all these heads behind. And what that essentially is like you'll have a slider, and it actually comes with the sliders too already. And if this smile one has a slider, you slide it and then it starts smiling, and then you go back, and then you can key those. So then you're animating the face essentially. That's one method of animating a face. For films and stuff, I think that's the preferable, and for video games they do it a little different. But yeah, basically, so like I said, Fuse is going to be the most modular, but Autodesk character generator I think is going to be the most properly functioning, like it's built the best, and you're going to get the most versatility out of the output, as opposed to like the input with Fuse, all the parameters. This at the back end, when you're done with this, you're going to have a fully rigged character that you can move, just like I showed you with my character. It's going to already have most of this shit done for you. You're going to have blend shapes. You're basically going to have something you could make a film with without having to touch it much more. Fuse, on the other hand, and some other programs, you're going to have to do some more touching to make it acceptable for use, because there'll be some like glitchiness. You got to like, that's where having a little bit of knowledge of Maya can help you out.
And character generator is human IK ready too, right? So you can just slap mocap on it, like no problem.
Yeah, I believe so. That's my newest paradigm, is is using this program. So yeah, I think so. It's Autodesk. It functions well with Maya. It gives you an FBX. And this is, speaking of human IK, and the quick rig tool in Maya and the human IK, it allows you to take a character that's been modeled. So let's say I download from TurboSquid, which is a database, I download this guy and he doesn't have a rig yet. And now I've got the modeling part out of the way, but I know how to rig and I need to do, I'm going to be using this guy for a film and he needs to have a lot of ability to do things. And I don't want to just, I don't want to do that in Fuse or something because Fuse's ability to rig, or it was really Mixamo, is not as good. So I'm going to use Maya's tool so I can get a little more functionality. And so basically it's as simple as like you stand him there in T-pose or something, and that T-pose is when the arms are out parallel to the ground. That's what his right arm is doing. And then you just kind of like apply these joints, as you can see on the right here. These are like quadrants, and then within those there's going to be more joints within the it's you can actually decide how complicated you want to get. There's like an automatic one where you can just, it's just done, or there's like there's step by step, I believe that's what it's called, is like step by step or like auto or something. And then you can be a little more precise about it. And then yeah, I'm pretty sure you can apply these controllers, which are these things you see wrapped around here. And those are just controllers. It's like if you put a handle on something, so it's easier to move rather than just animating right on the joints, which is not as it's not what usually you would do if you could help it. So that's another way. And this is Mixamo, and this is a mocap library where you're going to have a lot of really most things you could want, like dancing or crouching or jumping or just standing still or punching or all kinds of poses, and then animations along with them. And that's mocap data, and it works really well with Fuse. It's kind of, they're built for each other, both by Adobe, where you make a character in Fuse, you upload it to Mixamo, and then you apply an animation with Mixamo, or you just rig it with Mixamo. And it's a very simple way of doing that. And I like to do that for crowds because Mixamo has a lot of good like clapping, and I'll show you a video I made with that, clapping and stuff like that. And it's really simple to make a bunch of characters that look relatively different pretty fast, so the crowd isn't just a bunch of the exact same people copied over and over again. And I think that Fuse and Mixamo are really good for crowds where you don't need a lot of versatility. You want some diversity of different kinds of characters. You want to be able to do that fast, and you want animations that look pretty good. I like to use it for that. Like I said, you're gonna want to use things where they seem appropriate for you. And this is TurboSquid. These are models that are already made. Some of them might be rigged, some of them might not be. You download them, and then you can apply a rig like I showed you in Maya, or they might already come with a rig, and maybe they're not UV mapped. These are UV mapped, but there's certain things that have this or that, and maybe you don't know how to do this, but you know how to do that, so you get this and you don't get that kind of stuff. So let me get into a project I made for a freelance project. It was called, well, I'm calling it Sunda's Funky Fridays because it was Sunda who asked me to do it, and the project was Funky Fridays. So the prompt: make a funky commercial for the LA variety show Funky Fridays. This is a show in LA that I frequented and was asked by the owner to make something for her. Create a 3D character in the likeness of Sunda, who is the showrunner. The character will be speaking, so it must be rigged and animated. This is kind of where you get to know, what program should I use? Okay, it's almost like it's like a puzzle. It's like, okay, it needs to be rigged and animated. So what programs allow me to do that in the way that I want best? And this is where it's like, there's no need for me to construct from the ground up a perfect 3D representation of her. She's not paying me enough. I don't have enough time, and it's just not necessary. So those are the reasons. The character will be speaking, like I said, I'm going to recreate the comedy club itself where the show takes place. I took some pictures of the inside and stuff, create an audience in the club, and I have 2 months to do it and not that much money, like I said. So again, I'm going to try to do this as fast as I can, because in a way it's like the longer if you're getting a lump sum of money for a project, the longer you work, the less your hourly rate is, if you think about it. So I could do all of that, but if she's giving me $800, which she did, and try to take it back, but that's another story that if I have time, I'll get into. But if she's giving me $800 and I do it in 80 hours, I'm getting $10 an hour. If it takes me 800 hours, now I'm getting $1 an hour. So you want to think about things like that. You don't think about that as intuitively, but it's important to use your time wisely and not bankrupt yourself or run out of your available time. So the plan of attack here, after a little bit of trial and error, there's going to be some trial and error. For Sunda, the character, I'm going to use Fuse to make a basic model of her. I'm going to download her afro from TurboSquid, because that was another decision I had to make. I was like, do I want to learn how to model hair in Maya? Do I want to take all of that time and do that? Or do I want to just pay $20, which I'm going to ask her for anyways, and download an afro from TurboSquid? And decisions like that, it seems pretty, self-evident. Well, yeah, I'm going to download it. And then I'm going to use Maya's quick rig and Human IK to rig her. So I'm going to basically make the model in Fuse, get the hair, attach it to her body. And then in Maya, I'm going to rig her, and then I'm going to download mocap from Mixamo and then apply that to the rig. So that is a simplistic view of what I did. I could have just used Mixamo to apply mocap directly to her, but for one reason or another, it made more sense for me to use Maya's tool to rig her first. And that's probably because I was having trouble with Mixamo as being glitchy. I mean, I would guess that's why. For the crowd, I'm just going to use Fuse to do all the modeling, use Mixamo to animate it. The club scene itself, take photos of the club for reference, and then that's all just downloads. And I ask her for the money. I say, this is how much I'm going to spend. And because, if I modeled all that, who knows how long that would take me to do it well, but I can download all that stuff. And that's why I think a big thing in 3D is it might feel like cheating sometimes. You're like, wait a second, like I can just download stuff. But, there's people who are hired and their sole job is to be set designers. I mean, in 3D, you don't have to do everything. You can, or you could just be a set designer. Like there's a lot of different jobs. There's people who dedicate their whole careers to subsets of work in 3D, and there's no need to get mad at yourself for not doing everything, which I've suffered from on occasion. So where is it? I kind of wanted to start by showing the video itself, just so you could see what the final product was. Where is it though?
Probably have to do that and then go into a question, since we're running at about 10 minutes left.
Okay, let me just show, I'll find that. I don't know what the hell that is. I'll just find that, but basically, yeah, so this is Sunda in Fuse, and I opted to make it pretty high quality. As like I made like the textures like 4K. You can see there's pretty good detail, and I worked on, I really worked on working from her face to make it look as much like her as I can. I should have included a picture of her, but I think it looks like her. She didn't think it looked like her. And that created a lot of drama between me, her, and her husband, unfortunately. So like I said, I'll go into that if it's if we have time. But I thought that looks a lot like her, and that was what I got from Fuse. And then this is what happened in Maya. So I brought that into Maya, and then I got the afro, as you can see, from TurboSquid, attached that to her. And then you can see I used the Maya functions to rig her. And then you can see this folder structure here, which is essentially all the joints and stuff. But instead of doing it one by one like I did with my character, it did that all for me, which was nice. I did have to do some stuff with the mouth because while Fuse was the best choice for this, it doesn't come with blend shapes. So I had to actually make my own blend shapes and then use that to make her speak a little bit. So it's like, for me, I have some more options. I know how to do some things. But I wouldn't say yes to something I didn't know how to do. So I knew I'd be able to figure that out if I needed to. So I was able to do that. And then this is the crowd, and I was able to just make a bunch of characters real fast. It's really not hard in Fuse, and then apply mocap to them very easily. You can see their mid laugh and clap and stuff like that. And it's super easy to do that with Fuse and Mixamo. And I've done that with 2 films now where I've made a crowd using Fuse and Mixamo only. There are, like I said, some glitches sometimes, which Brad can tell you about. Limitations, like I said, it's less modular, customized, and this is the last slide. Doesn't work for all characters. For example, Ruben, my character for my film, I couldn't have really done a lot of these things because Ruben was a 2-armed alien creature, Mike Wazowski thing, and that is there might be some ways I don't know if Maya could even make a rig for that. I don't know.
You could, the trick is to just have the rest of the rig that's just invisible, so it's not like the
Okay.
legs are bound to anything, and so you're getting arm animation and stuff. But yeah, it's more difficult because you have to retarget it. It's the term for it, retargeting it to a specific custom rig.
Right. Retarget. Yeah, I forgot to say that. Yes, that's what you do with the quick rig human IK thing. And yeah, and I don't know, maybe I could have like done these workarounds and stuff, but a lot of these programs are built with these templates in mind. They use an algorithm, like I said, that doesn't know your model, it just interprets what it sees. And for Ruben, I mean, I wanted to learn how to do that. I enjoyed the process. I know a lot now. But yeah, if I wanted to do that now, I might still do it the same way, even though I have these programs. It's like that that specifically, I like the way it turned out because I put all that work into it. So that's that. It can feel a little less personal sometimes. You use these templates that, I mean, but if you're doing commercial work, probably doesn't matter that much. Stylistically, you're going to be limited a little bit. There might be only certain looks and styles and stuff. And then it's not as spooky, which means it's a little bit easier. So happy Halloween, everybody.
Thanks, Jacob. Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of information. Cool. So one thing I want to ask real quick, because I saw it on that last slide. Do you know what wonk means for the wonk control?
Yes. I created that term myself. TM, wide, open, narrow, close, the wonk box. That,
wow.
yeah, that's the control. That's the basics. The basis of lip sync is and closed. So.
Yep. Yeah, you can get a pretty much most lip sync with those 4 basic shapes. Cool. All right, open it up to questions. Yes, Sam?
I have a question. You mentioned about a website that it's useful to, get to know Maya. You said window.com?
Oh, no, that's LinkedIn Learning, which used to be lynda.com.
Mhm.
Oh, Linda. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I still use my Ithaca College login and I can watch the videos. I do that for a lot of things. That's why I have Maya actually.
2 years out. Good job.
Yeah, it's if you want to private message me, I can maybe explain how I was able to do that. But yeah, basically I just send them the same information with an updated date every year. But yeah, so I'm able to do that, and I use LinkedIn still all the time, and it's super valuable for information about like anything from like animation to like statistical economics. Like it's like everything. So
Thank you.
Yeah, the site Pluralsight is like a similar service, but it's more like focused on like 3D high-end stuff. Nomon is another one that's some just VFX and 3D focused. But yeah, probably a school has LinkedIn subscription. So take advantage of that, everyone, while you can. I'm
How
gonna
many
be
people here have used Maya before?
is it just you? Is it just us, Jacob? Aw.
Besides you, Brad.
Wah, wah.
You guys feel at least a little bit more familiar now that we've been
Blender.
an
Yeah,
hour?
Blender's great. Blender's great to get in on, but if you can put Maya as a skill for 3D work, it's good to have.
I'll get you an instant job.
If you can have proficiency in Maya, you can find work, certainly. But Blender is amazing because of the community. So if you're like looking to get into accessible 3D stuff, and you're looking like for a specific like effect or something like that, you can find like countless resources for that. So and it can get you into other 3D programs too. So I'll say, like, I usually say the second 3D program you ever learn is like the hardest piece of software like to grapple with, because you're making that transition from the other one. But the terms, if you learn like synonyms and stuff, it's pretty easy to map a one-to-one between applications.
Yeah, I'm experiencing that with Houdini, but there are some major
Yeah.
formatting differences.
Houdini's like also just fundamentally, just philosophically different. To have
Yeah,
like completely node-based 3D VFX simulations, pretty cool.
I like the node-based kind of workflow. I think even with Nuke, it teaches me about the process, just knowing how things work like that in depth.
It's a form of logic too, and when you see it like mapped out visually, I think it becomes understandable. So for artists, like, programming is like really intimidating, but if you break it down to a visual flow, like with nodes, you can understand it, you can tackle it.
I do, if anyone's interested, have some, like I said, some experience with that particular freelance project, which I learned some things. It's a fun experience. If anyone wants some on the scene advice, but otherwise I think our time's up. So feel free to also just leave.
Thank you, Jacob. Well, it was very informative, and also there's some stuff I learned too about some resources I wasn't aware of. So thanks for that. Can you make your PowerPoint like available, like export as a PDF or share it online or something?
Yeah, sure.